Hey, I'm Isabel,
And I'm Aviva. You're listening to When Isabel Met Aviva,
a podcast about rom-coms, female-driven screenwriting, and how to break into the entertainment industry. This is being recorded in November, right before Thanksgiving, but you may not be hearing it until January 2026.
Yeah.
So please excuse any potential confusion if we're talking about the holidays.
Yeah, Christmas hasn't happened yet. It's still cuffing season. And what has been going on with you with writing as well?
Still haven't written anything, but honestly, I'm starting to like feel more okay with that. I feel actually kind of like even though I haven't really been writing, I feel like I've taken a lot of pressure off myself, which to me is a win because I'm sure other writers can relate to like the constant like stressing ourselves out and putting ourselves down for not writing and not getting anything done. And I ended up having a really good pep talk with my producer that I had worked with on some previous scripts that I had written for him. And I actually really appreciated that conversation because he kind of like reached out to me randomly and wanted to chat and give me like an update on our scripts. And I actually really appreciated like he gave me some of the feedback that like places that had rejected it had given, and like none of it was like really bad. Like I actually agreed with a lot of it, and so it was kind of interesting to think about when you're like writing for somebody else. It's like I didn't like necessarily take it all as if it means like I'm a bad writer or anything. It's just I understood the feedback, and I understood like what they were saying because it's also stuff I feel like I agreed with, and so I was kind of like, yeah, I know, maybe this is why you don't have like four people trying to write something.
Yeah.
But I guess I say all this to say that I appreciated that like I don't know, he just like didn't make me feel bad for like, because I was just honest because he was asking me if I had anything that he could read, and I was just like, no, I don't, I'm sorry, like this has just been a rough year for me, and I'm not gonna like make myself feel bad that I don't have any writing to show from it necessarily. But I really appreciated the like kind of pep talk he gave me, which I was just sort of reiterating everything we've heard from everybody, which is that it's just people are moving slow, people aren't necessarily buying things. And he was just saying to just like focus on writing and writing stuff that you want to write. And he also gave me, I realized I'm definitely somebody who works well with compartmentalization. And we talked a lot about running because I've been, anyone maybe that follows me online knows that I've really gotten into running lately. And he was kind of telling me to think about how I trained for my half marathon and like look at my training schedule and how I kind of carved out like basically two big runs a week, which is like an hour and a half of my time to like do my training runs, and to apply that to my writing as well. And to just think of it as like, I have to get up at 6 a.m. to write for an hour or an hour and a half. And like, that's my like writing time. And that like the goal is not necessarily to run a half marathon, but the goal is to finish a script at the end of it. And so I was like, actually, this kind of analogy works for me. So
That's nice.
I'm planning to, right now is like too crazy for me at work right now. So I think once things slow down after the holidays, I can like make an actual writing schedule for myself, which I don't know if you've ever done that. I mean, I'm kind of curious. Do other writers
Oh.
make an actual like writing schedule for yourself? Because I am now seeing that that might help me stay accountable, just literally applying it the same way to the way I trained for the half marathon.
Yeah, I've never really been that disciplined in that I've never mapped out my hours or anything. I'm either just constantly writing every day sometimes or just not writing. That's
Yeah.
kind of, there's no in between. But I like that idea. So many of my favorite writers talk about, carving out the morning hours, when it's
Mhm.
their profession. So yeah, definitely keep us
I feel like
posted.
I feel like earlier this year, like last year, I was really good at that. That I would wake up and sort of my first hour would be spent writing and having my
I like
coffee. But
that.
I think I just kind of fell out of that because I guess I started running instead and
Yeah.
doing other
Too
things
many
in the
hobbies.
morning. Yeah. So
No.
I just
I
need to
think,
figure out the
yeah.
time.
I definitely think, it sounds really nice to kind of romanticize it. And I love that idea of morning writing, morning pages from, what is her name? The Artist's Way book. Uh, Yeah. So I definitely like that. I like the idea. I've also heard the sentiment where I think Marie Forleo, she's a like a self-help woman, but she's a writer as well. And she's talked about like not absorbing any content before she writes. Like that's kind of a
Mhm.
rule, like in the morning, not going on social media, not absorbing media anywhere. And I like that
Yeah.
idea, but I've never truly done that.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So it sounds like things are happening behind the scenes, and you sound a little more hopeful about just controlling what we can control.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I've also had some frustrations this year just because I feel like I'm still so close, and then like it's like someone dangling a carrot in front of me
Yeah.
forever, where they're like they love your work, but they're not ready to buy yet. That kind of
Mm.
sentiment. But I have gotten some encouraging, like words of affirmation from a few producers. And basically, my scripts are being considered at, I think I can say this, at Hallmark. So I have like two different projects with two different producers who are trying to sell my work to Hallmark. And it's really cool to get this far. And I want to stay hopeful and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but it's just like always this carrot dangling where they're like, well, it's not, it's like, I
Yeah.
just feel like you know, I'll feel more validated when someone actually wants to purchase something. But we should control what we can control and write,
Mhm.
and that's all we can really control.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
But that's exciting. I feel like it's
Yeah.
just a matter of when, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's that quote about like, old you would be so thrilled to be where you are now. And I
Mhm.
do, I don't have my sales yet, but yes, like 2020 version of me was not this far and
Yeah.
didn't didn't have the connections I do. Um, so yeah, we'll see what 2026 brings. Okay, so today we're doing a really exciting interview, and this is going to be a surreal one because we are interviewing the screenwriter of How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And I mean, one of the most iconic rom-coms of our time. So her name is Kristen Buckley. But yeah, this film is one that, many guests on the show have cited. Obviously,
Mhm.
Andy's yellow dress, golden
Yeah.
dress is, wonderful and beautiful. And I've seen this movie countless times. I love that Sleepless in Seattle is kind of referenced in it because that's
Oh,
my
yeah.
favorite
I do
rom-com.
love
So
that part.
yeah, I do feel like this one just, it completely kind of, what's the right word? Like I feel like it just impacted so many rom-coms to come and it's just such a reference point. Let's just welcome Kristen here. She's in the lobby. So we are live with Kristen. Welcome, Kristen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you.
We're so excited to chat with you. So if you could just start out with like introducing yourself and how you became a screenwriter, and then yeah, we'd love to learn more about How to Lose a Guy in
It's
10
the
Days.
whole how I became a screenwriter is the weirdest thing on earth because I started out as a musician. So I went
Oh.
to music school and I studied composition and I studied improvisation and I played guitar and I wasn't going to be a writer. I was going to be like a composer and a instrumentalist. And when I was around 25, I guess, I was just so burnt out and so if you want to talk about sexism, go into the music business. Like it makes everything else look just like a rainy day in Disneyland. And I just think I wasn't prepared for that. I thought we were beyond that. And then I was like, oh, we're totally not beyond this. So I just sort of was really burnt out and I had dropped out of Manhattan School of Music and I had studied some composition at Juilliard and dropped out of there and I took some classes at Hunter and I was like literally my mother's worst nightmare because I was like the smartest child, totally broke, living in New York City, like waiting tables. And it was like not what she had envisioned for me. And so I just thought I should be a writer because like it's the one thing I really love to do. And out of necessity, it was very much a case of like, I don't need anyone to do it with me. Like, it's like when you have a band, you need people. When you know what I mean? If you're composing, you need an orchestra. And this was like, I can just do this and totally control it. I can just do it. And no one can tell me not to do it, and no one can take it away from me. And it's like this amazing thing that I can just do. And so basically, well, it's like such a banana story, because like I just ended up waiting tables, and I was writing a bit, but sort of like, oh, I'll be a novelist, or, oh, I'll write short stories or whatever. But like, I had always been the one, like, growing up in my house, storytelling was my job. I had this really crazy family, and I was the one who could like reframe tragedy into something funny so that we could all get through it. So that was like my apprenticeship. Learning how to make sense of chaos through story was like something I did. And I read constantly, and I watched constantly, and I listened to people. But like, I'm self-taught. You know, I'm sort of like an autodidact, which is like a whole other issue. Cause like, if you put me in a class and you're like, you have to study this, I'm like, I don't want to study that. I only want to do this. I'll just leave. So like, I was just writing the whole time, but my trajectory went, oh, they're filming a movie down the street from my apartment. I lived in New York. I'll just go there with coffee every day and give it to whoever will take it. And the AD took it. And I was like a lurker, like, I'm just here, you know? And eventually a PA got fired, and she was like, let's hire that girl who shows up every day and seems to know what I need before I need it. Gosh. And so I got a job working as a PA, and then the crew was all from Law and Order. So then I got a job working on Law and Order. And eventually, and I was a really bad PA, because I was a little bit like, that's stupid. You can do that yourself. You know, like, I'd be working for actors, and they'd be like, could you get me lunch? And I'd be like, no, you can get your own lunch, you know? And I worked with Sam Waterston, and he was so sweet, and he would forget to change his clothes all the time. And they'd yell at me. I'd be like, aren't you the wardrobe supervisor? Like, how am I say it's a blue suit? It's a gray suit. I don't know. I tell him to change. He doesn't change. So I was like, Sam, you got to change. Because like, I'm in trouble because you won't change, you know? And he was like, you're right. I'm so sorry. And he was like, and the schedule is so crazy. So it ended up that he gave me his credit card. And whenever it was time to eat lunch, I could order Japanese or whatever I wanted on his credit card. So it's like this bananas thing, which like, that's not how you're supposed to be a PA. You're supposed to be very deferential. But I was like, Sam, you got to change your clothes and give me your credit card because I'm hungry. So from there, I ended up getting a job as a book scout in a New York office at Fox 2000, which was, again, I had a really good antenna for opportunities. So I'd be like, okay, this production thing is kind of cool, and I'm doing this, but like, who are those people going into the offices? Like, what's their story? Like, oh, so there's writers back there. How did they get there? You know, how do you get an agent? And so I ended up like, I talked to people, and then someone knew someone who was a book scout in New York. And at that time, that was like a huge, huge thing. There were these offices, and you'd read 10 books a day and try to buy them for films, the whole thing. So again, same deal. I just sort of showed up when they were opening up an office at Fox 2000, and I worked for free, and I waited tables on the weekends, and I just became indispensable. And eventually I went to work for Scott Rudin. He's a very famous producer who like got in trouble for being mean, whatever, but who was a brilliant, brilliant producer. And when I was at his office, I slipped a script I wrote to a friend at another studio with a different name on it. And I said, could you get this covered for me? And at that time, spec scripts were the way to do it. Now it's different. I mean, I guess it's still, there is some of that, but it's a lot of like being an assistant for a writer and stuff like that. There was none of that when I was coming up. So I sent it to Fox 2000, where I had worked, because I knew a lot of people there. Changed the name, gave it this really cheesy name, like Love on the Rocks, which was like so bad, like the Neil Diamond song. And I was like embarrassing. And it came back, I'll never forget. I came back from lunch, and I looked at my desk, and my coverage had come in on the script that I wrote under a fake name. And it said, consider highly. And I was like, wow, oh my God. Because if you got considered coverage like that, you were going to sell. But then I still couldn't say it was me because like I knew everyone at Fox 2000. So I didn't want to say it was me. So I used that to get an agent at ICM. I was like, oh yeah, I work for Rudin and there's this script around town that's really good. It's getting considered coverage and they need an agent. So I sent it out as if I was just like an executive trying to help a writer. Like the whole thing was mental. I had a stomach ache 20 hours a day.
You're so smart.
Yeah.
And
It's an unusual trajectory,
I'm like
for sure.
it's a bananas trajectory. That's why I said like I don't know that I can recommend this to anyone else.
Yeah.
It's a lot of just showing up and people being like, who are you? And so I ended up getting an agent at ICM. And she was a fabulous agent. And she's like, okay, I want to meet you. I want to meet this writer. And I go, oh, well, it's actually me. And that's what happened. And so she sold that script. And then like from there, I started working. And so that's sort of how it happened. But it was, that trajectory from like walking onto a film set after quitting music to selling a spec was 5 years. And it was 5 years of total doubt and uncertainty and learning how to really, I'm still learning the crap. You know what I mean? Like you're just like a baby writer. So you're just sort of like, what are you good for? And my whole thing was I had a unique voice. I didn't sound workshopped. Like I didn't sound like I came out of USC or NYU, or I had no notes from anybody. I just watched 40 million movies. And so like that's what I did. But I also had studied composition with music. So I understood structure. Like there are things that I inherently understand, but I think of them musically rather than narratively. And it's intuitive. So I would say my superpower is that I didn't come up through the same old channels, but my curse or whatever you want to call it is that because I didn't come up on the same old channels, I've always been an outlier. Always. Like I've been working since 2000, pretty much nonstop, but I'm always like in this weird corner of the sandbox. It's always like, wait, because my whole thing is I can take a story and I can come at it differently from how anybody else is going to come at it. Like that's How to Lose a Guy was like that. So I was sent this little stick figure book. It was like a comic and it was a flip book and it was silly. And Dee Dee Gardner sent it to me. She was at Paramount at the time. She runs Plan B. But Dee Dee and I knew each other because she was from New York and she subletted her apartment to one of my best friends. Like it was really like that kind of a thing, And so she's like, oh, you sold the script and you did this and you did that. Okay, let me send you this thing we have at Paramount. And at that time, the business was like, we love the title of this. We're going to make a movie. Like that's how they would think. It's a great title, So Sherry Lansing was like, it's a great title. And so they sent this thing to me and it was just all the psychotic things girls do in a relationship. And I was young at the time and pretty psychotic. Like I was reading something recently where they were talking about young women and men. And they were like, the author said, the girls are fertile, feral, and totally fucked up. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty true. Like we are fertile and feral. And so we have to be excused, all are crazy. So at the time, though, it was a little too close to home, right? Because I was just like, well, this is mean to the girls. I don't want to be mean to the girls because I'm one of the girls. And so I kept saying no. Like, I don't want to write something where like I'm taking shots at girls because I'm the girl crying at 2 a.m. on the street corner and I'm the girl like bringing the plant being like, love me, So it was a whole thing. So that Dee Dee was like, no, you have to do it. And I was like, okay. And so then they're like, we're going to fly you to LA and you're going to meet with the exec and you're going to pitch your take. Okay. And it's like very much beginner mind, right? Because I'm always just like, okay, like, I don't know. All right. So when I was on the plane, I was like, oh, wait, what if she's faking it? And I was like, what if she's doing all these things to drive him away, but she's not doing them because she's desperate or crazy or freaking out about when she's going to get married and have a baby? Like we all live with that. We don't need to go see that in a movie, So once I had that, I was okay. I was like, I cracked it. You know what I mean? And so then I went in and I was like, it's a fake. She's doing this to try to drive this guy away, while simultaneously he has reasons to stay in it. And now you have the push-pull that you need for like a romantic comedy, you know, because you have to constantly have, I will say that, like, when I got a rom-com like that, and the crazy thing about that script is like, you have no idea. Like, Sandy Bullock was attached for a minute. Cameron Diaz was attached. George Clooney was attached. Danny DeVito was attached to direct it for a minute. Like, it was so bananas. Like, it was such a, and my script, like, you know, we have lots of rewrites and lots of writers come on and everything. So when I came on and when I was writing it, and I was the one who cracked it and did all that. So like, I really do sort of feel like I have ownership of that script, but mine was even raunchier. Like Sherry was like, no, we're not having them do coke. And no, we're not having, you know, like, because she was always saying to me, please, like, something about Mary had just been out. And she was like, I really want you to push this. So I really pushed it. And so it was really funny because I was like, why are you taking out the cocaine fueled freak out? I'm like, leave the cocaine freak out. That's funny. You know, so it was hilarious. Yeah. And especially because the producer was Robert Evans, who's like this legendary old school, like a cocaine freak out would have been totally fine by him, you know? So, but it was just kind of funny. And it was a real learning curve for me about, like, there's the movie that you as the writer want to make, and then there's the movie the studio will make. And those two things aren't always the same, you know, because they can't be economically. And it was kind of funny because it taught me, like, where there were things I was pushing back on, and then, like, I was like, no, I don't want to write her singing. You know what I mean? But then that became like what everyone loves. So it's sort of like, you don't know. It's just so hard because I think as a writer, you have to be so, it's a delicate balance, because on the one hand, you want to please your bosses. You know, you're being paid. You don't have ownership of this. Like, you are being paid for drafts and you're expected to deliver. But it's like, you learn, like, oh, this draft is for the studio. Okay. Oh, now we're going to go for actors. Okay, this draft is for the actors. It's different. It's like you're turning up volumes and lowering volumes and all this kind of stuff. But then I don't know, it was just such an interesting lesson in, especially when it was so huge and it just blew up, you know? And I think it just made me think a lot about, like, what does it take to make a good romantic comedy? And also, so much of it is chemistry. So much of it is chemistry. Like, when I worked for Scott Rudin, I was a book person for him. And, you know, I would say, like, Scott, we should buy this book. This would be really great. It's a great book. And he would say, we could buy this book, but unless we get Tom Cruise, we can't make this movie. And I'd be like, really? Why not? Like, you could make it with Willem Dafoe, or you could. And he's like, nope, this story won't hold unless it's with someone of a certain caliber, you know? And that's why I think right now we're sort of in a space where people have kind of, they think we're post movie star. And I don't think we're post movie star. I think there's like a big shuffling of the studios and the streamers. And we had COVID, which I think 20 years from now we'll be like, oh my God, we were insane from COVID. Like, we're like shirking it off like it was no big deal. But I think it was really a big deal. Yeah. And so I think we're going to end up back in movie theaters. I think we're going to have all that. And then we're going to go back to movie stars. Like, I think there are some movie stars, but there's a lot of people who are starring in movies that are not movie stars. And you need movie stars to have really great romantic comedies. You do, because they have to be big enough to support the arc of aspiration of the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, we
like
agree.
You have to be willing to put all your hearts and minds into them. And if they feel too familiar or they feel too ordinary, it just doesn't get liftoff, you know? There's something about that. But, like, I'm very confident that will happen. I just think it's really easy to say, like, no, you know, like, it's over. And you're like, it's not over. Like, we love stories. That's the one thing about being human, right? That plays the thing. We've been listening to stories for thousands of years, and we know good ones. And we like actors who can bring that for us, you know? We're just in a little funny period, I think. Which isn't to say there's still not good stuff out there. There is, but like the sort of movie stars, we need some more movie stars. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And studios have to remember that. Yeah, they have to remember that. And I mean, because they cultivate them. Like Sherry Lansing would say, we will make her a movie star. Like there's a way to do it, you know? And it's not to flood the zone with them. You have to kind of keep them from everybody a little, you know? Although like even Brad Pitt's everywhere, but he's a movie star, you know?
Yeah. Do you remember how it ended up being Kate Hudson and
Matthew
McConaughey? I was like,
yeah, it was like, it had gone through a lot of actors, and then at some point it was Kate, and Kate seemed really perfect. Like it was like, oh, you know what I mean? Like she's got the right energy. And I just thought like, I can totally see this because she's funny, but she's smart and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then it was sort of the hunt for the guy. And I want to say for a minute, it was Jimmy Fallon.
Oh.
Yeah.
I guess he was doing it because you were making me think
he
that
was.
Were they big?
Well, because he did that movie with Drew, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, the baseball one.
Yeah, and I at that time had a script with her. Oh, it was just such a crazy time because you'd go to these offices and it was just like, oh my God. Drew had this amazing office in the building where Soho House is. And it was like, let's meet in the war room. And like, you'd go to the war room and there were like airplanes hanging from the ceiling and stuff, you know? Or she'd be like, let's meet in the puppy room. And you'd go in there and there'd be puppies. You were like, oh my God, there's puppies, you know? And then like Courtney Love would come by and you'd be like, oh my God, Courtney Love's here. Like it was so fun and crazy. But yeah, so, and I only say that because Drew's partner at the time was Nancy Giovanna, and Nancy's married to Jimmy Fallon. That's why I remembered it, because it was sort of like, I'd go to the office with them and then I'd be like, what's up with Jimmy? And, you know, and the whole thing too with romantic comedies is male actors don't like to be outshined by their female leads. So oftentimes you have this whole tug of war between like, you've got this really dynamic character who's female, and then you want to get someone equally in there, but all the guys who would be equal are like, can you give me more lines, you know? And you're like, well, that defeats the whole purpose, right? Yeah. So then I think what happened was that Matthew, I heard wind that he was reading it, and then I was just like, oh my God, he'd be so perfect, you know, because he's just got like this like drawl, laid back thing that goes so well against Kate's, like Kate leans it forward and he leans back, and it was the perfect sort of like push pull for the story. And yeah, and so then it happened, and then it was just like, oh my gosh, you know. But I mean, it's still the whole way, like until it's in the can, you just don't know if it's going to be made or not. So you almost have to just completely forget about it, which is torture, you know. Like I'm like the queen of cleaning closets because I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Like, what can I control here? Oh, I can control, you know, my kid's closet, and they're like, stop throwing my shit out, and I'm just like,
just decluttering all the time.
I have to declutter. I have to control what I can control. So yeah, so that movie got made really fast as well, all things considered, you know. It's been a ride off that movie, I'll tell you that much. That was crazy. Yeah.
I love the friend characters too. I feel like a lot of rom-coms now don't have that wonderful balance of friendship for like comedy, and like, I love Andy's friends a lot, and I love
the whole
Ben's
thing
friend.
too is like it's so fun because then you get all these secondary characters, you get them playing off people, you know. Like I'm working on a romantic comedy now that I'm just sort of specking and playing with, and like it's about this young filmmaker. She's like a documentary filmmaker, and she's like over it. She's just over all of it. She had a really shitty breakup, and so she's doing like an Errol Morris like documentary that's like deconstructing her relationship by recreating it. And so it's really fun because she's recreating these moments when I met his family, and she's casting it and doing all this kind of stuff, which is fun. But she has this crew with her, and I love the crew almost as much as I love her. Like they're so fun, like just weighing in, and you just get, I don't know, you just have, it's hard for actors, because like you need to give them stuff to play off of, you need to give them tests within the scene, otherwise we're just watching people run errands, and it's like nobody wants to watch people run errands, it's like a mistake that I see like a lot of younger writers make is like they have this really well written scene, but like there's no test for the actor. It's like the actor shows up, the actor, the character says like, hey, is he here? Yeah, he's here. Okay, cool. And then they go in and you're like, there's nothing for the actor to do. It's like they can't get in the building and the elevator's broken and the stairs aren't working and their best friend's calling to say they're an idiot. And, like everything has to be obstacles. It's just obstacles all the time. Or it's just not fun for them to play, more than anything. I mean, the story demands it, but it's not fun for them, if you're not giving them enough to do. And so when you have fun, because your best friends, right, or even the people you work with or whatever, they're like your Greek chorus of your life, So I just think it's really fun to have that. I just love that in general, Like James L. Brooks is really good at that.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice for writers to think about is like you're writing for people who are going to read the lines and act these scenes out. So I imagine that How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days was probably a really fun script for the actors to read and be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to like do these scenes in the apartment.
Yeah. It's interesting because like when you write a first draft, if you're hired by a studio to write something, your first draft is for the studio. Your first draft is to show them this is a movie, which means you've got to make sure you've addressed the theme. You're writing to theme, right? Like, is it about control? Is it about, I think like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is about control. It's about this idea of like, I can be in control of a relationship because I can manipulate. And I think what Andy learns in the end is that like, in order to have love, you have to just be willing to wing it. You have to let go, And so like you're constantly thinking, what is this really about? Right. And for that first pass or second pass, the first two passes, let's say, your job is to sell it to the studio because the studio's paid you to do it, but they're simultaneously going like, I don't know, I don't want to do it. Because all the executives are so terrified that if it doesn't work, it's their fault. Do you see? So like, that's your first hurdle. You got to convince them it's a movie, which means you can make ridiculous set pieces. You can have them swinging from chandeliers, that scenes that are just never going to get made. Like you could have like a, I don't know, stop the movie moment in the middle of Times Square. That is not going to be in the final thing of the movie, but it will help them to feel good about it because what you need is their buy-in. You're getting them to drink the Kool-Aid, right? And to feel comfortable with you and confident with you. It's like a whole, like you're dating and you may hand in 2 drafts and you get paid and you never hear from them again. You just get ghosted. Like that can happen, like it's like, oh, I guess they didn't like it. I don't know, but where you want to be is they call you excited after the second pass. That's where you want to be. And the first pass too, but like then you're taking their notes and then you're learning like what is the note behind the note? Because usually when people give you a note, the note is not the note. The note is like, oh, there's something else bugging them. So you have to, as a screenwriter, go back and really be critical, really critical. Anything that's not working, because between the first draft and the second draft, I can tell you they're going to want to see major, major revisions. Yeah. They say, oh, it's not much. Like they'll say, it's just a little bit. But no, you have to go back in and be like, hey, guys, that secondary character was not working. So I cut him out, but I added this new character. You know what I mean? Like you have to really be that person because they are not going to tell you. For the most part, there are a lot of smart studio executives, but I would say that you have to be your most critical reader. And you have to be merciless, truly merciless. Yeah. You have to go through it like every scene. There's a really great book that David Mamet wrote on directing, actually. I think it's called On Directing. And he talks about what is required in a scene to work, right? Like there has to be, it's just like, how are you saying it? How are you writing it? What does the character want and what are they doing and how are they failing? Because that's what throws you into the next scene. If the character gets what they want at the end of the scene, the movie is done. right? So every scene has to sort of end up in failure of some sort, which pushes you to the next scene. But anyway, it's on directing, but it applies to writing. It's great to look at, because I think that that's what you have to really do, is really rip stuff apart. And it's very rare that you will find a producer or a studio exec who will do the work with you to that extent. That said, like, I'm doing something now with producers in Italy. They're called Our Films. They used to be The Apartment, but like they did My Beautiful Friend on HBO, and they did Sofia Coppola's last movie, and they're like fabulous producers, but they really sit like, because I really like that. I'm like, let's just sit and go page by page, and I'll talk to you about what I'm doing. But short of that, that's what you have to do with yourself. Like, you have to take the scene and you read it and you go, here's what I'm trying to say. Here's what I think is missing. Here's where I think it's not working. But here's what I'm trying to do. And you literally go like, and I'm thinking of this movie and that movie and this. And like, literally you end up with like a giant legal pad full of notes that are just your own. And it's so good because you really are working through everything. Or maybe you get to like page 70 and you have this really great scene, right? And you're like, oh, this is really good. But there's nothing, or I haven't earned it. How am I going to earn this moment? And how do I work backwards? So I tend to do that. Like, I tend to take like 10 days of like intensive, I'm having notes with myself and just everything, even like cutting out collages and pictures and quotes and songs and everything, because the whole thing is to take what's in here and get it on the page so that someone else can actually see it when they read it. Because the crazy thing is it's still just a blueprint. It's a blueprint. It's not a finished thing. It's evolving. But you're like the first mother, like you're birthing it so everyone else can see it. And then sometimes people will come along and be like, hey, what about, and you're like, whoa, everyone's there to kind of help bring it into being. But if you don't do all the heavy lifting you can, like if you are not lifting as hard as you possibly can, no one else will.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like on you. And I don't even really trust reads from other people. It's like your gut, in your head what you want to say. So you have to force yourself, you know what I mean? Like, it's a marathon. And then, and then a lot of times you just feel really dumb. Like, that's part of it too. Like, you just have to you have to be able to feel really uncomfortable often. Most of the time, all the time. And you just compartmentalize it, like someone asked me, I'm waiting for a read on something and they're like, how is that? And I'm like, awful. I'm like,
hard work.
Let's just move on, but it's fine, and I mean, I was a book scout, so I get it. I would read something and be like, I wouldn't think, oh, this person spent 3 years agonizing over every word. And believe me, some writers are lazy. Sometimes you read something, you go, this is crap. Like, you are a hack. But for someone who's not, and you go like, I know this is good, but it's just not going to work, then it's not personal, but it is crushing. Like, I get that, I understand that. And sometimes you'll write something that you love and like, it's just not the right time for it. That's okay. Pivot, do something else. Just keep going, and always be like, my big thing is like, just how can you make your craft better? Like, that's my huge thing. And like lately for me, it's all about syntax. I'm all about grammar, like literally grammar. I don't really have a problem coming up with stories or characters. Like, I've just led a weird life, and like, there's like, I'm just a weird magnet. So like, I got loads and loads coming my way, like all crazy stuff. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Or that would be fun. But for me, my secret weapon is grammar because I have synesthesia. So like, I sort of feel words the way someone might feel texture or temperature. So grammar for me is like very emotional, and sentences have architecture, and there's like all sorts of stuff you can do with parataxis and hypallage, and you can do all sorts of things because within the script itself, I was actually talking to a manager about this yesterday, about how like you can never give an actor you can't tell an actor how you want them to play the scene. You can't tell them what they feel. You can't write in the script like, she's kind of mad, but she's kind of glad. And you know when you feel this way, like you can't do that. And I'm like, why can't we do that? Like it would be so much easier if we could just do that, you know, or like you want the actor to say it a certain way, but you can't give them a line reading. And you're like, why can't I? You know, I'm just like, we should end that. That's stupid, you know? But so I'm always trying to find ways to layer in the emotion into the descriptions. So like, let's say a character's really tired. It's lame if you write, Joe is tired. He enters the apartment. But if you say something like, he steps into the quiet apartment, the exhausted light falls across the floor. Well, the light isn't exhausted. He's exhausted. But like you're letting the feeling bleed into the environment with a few words, you know? So you can do stuff like that, or like you can use participles to layer action, like heart pounding, he reaches for the phone. Like that's a cheat. Like you could do that. You can't say he's nervous, he's worried. But if you just go heart pounding, actor will be okay with that. You know, so I'm always trying to think of that, but that's like fourth draft stuff. You know what I mean? That's like, studio doesn't care. The studio is always like, please tell us more about him. And you're like, Joe is a man who likes to think, you know? And then by the time you get to the actor, you're like, you take that completely out, and actor be like, what does that mean? You know? So there's like, it's all sorts of stuff like that. And you just have to kind of figure out sort of what, it's the translation. Like that's the hard work, right? It's the hard work of trying to get it onto the page for clarity, for rhythm, for emotional truth, right? It's like, and it's still just a blueprint, you know? It's still there to be interpreted by everyone, which is also sometimes painful because you're like, ooh, why did you do that? Like that was a weird choice, you know? But that gets to the whole issue of like, if I had to do it all over again, I would have started writing and directing from the jump, you know? Because I think that's really what young writers have to do today. You got to write and direct. Because that's what they want anyway. They want that because everyone's so nervous about saying if something works or not. So they want someone to be able to walk in the room and say, I wrote this and I will direct it and it will work. And they'll look, oh, okay. You know, okay, if you say so, you know. So, I mean, I think that's a really good thing to do. And the other thing I would say for younger writers is whatever it is you want to write, like I didn't set out to write romantic comedies. And then I was like kind of stuck in that genre for a really long time when my first spec was like a caper. I like capers, you know, like twists and turns with like a love interest is fine. But I love like Get Shorty and things like that was much more like what I was writing initially. And, but you will be pegged for whatever you want to do. So like if you go, oh, I want to make a short film that I write about, I don't know what it was like being 6 years old for Christmas. Just know that you will only be called for things with 6-year-olds after that. Do you see what I mean? Like, but what you really want to do is like All the President's Men. Don't do that. You know, make sure whatever your first thing is that you want to do is tonally where you want to be, because you'll be there for a while. You know,
that makes sense.
Especially as women writers, it's different. It's a little bit different for men because there's still a lot of sexism in the, like they would say there isn't, but there totally is. It's like completely, because a woman writer is always a risk. Whereas a male writer is like, we're taking a chance on this guy. You know, that's, it's just baked in. It's a sexist business, you know? I mean, it's even that way in literature, you know, like if you're writing books, they've done all sorts of things where you submit your novel under a man's name and under a woman's name, and the feedback is shockingly different.
Wow. Yeah.
You know?
Wow, yeah, that's disappointing. I'm curious
It
if
is
you're
disappointing.
Do you have a scene, just looking back on the film, like that you're especially proud of as a writer? Because there's so many iconic moments in this script that, you know, people reference and dress up as now. So I'm just curious, like, do you have a favorite scene that stands out to you?
I don't know that I do. I think it's more for
Yeah.
me. I just really enjoy, I like writing banter. And I just feel like anytime the two of them were like, pick, 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 it was really fun for me. And like, that's sort of what I'm most proud of, more so than like, I do like the scene in the restaurant where she's like, "Are you saying I'm fat?" Because I just think that's
Yeah.
The
still
vegan
so true. I don't
restaurant.
know. I was with my
Yeah.
husband recently, and he said something. I was like, "Oh, I feel so fat," and there was just like a long pause before he said anything, and I was like, "Are you saying I'm fat?" He was like, "I said nothing," and I'm like, "I know you said nothing." So I think that probably that restaurant scene is my favorite. I just think it's really funny how she just like totally twists the crazy on him, and he's like, "What is happening?" Because
Yeah.
that's still something that just happens all the time. You know.
I wanted to go back too quickly too, because you said that when you had like come up with the idea for like how to tell the story and then you pitched it and then where they just like go and write it and then it's because I think there's two other writers, right? That did you like co-write with them or like were there multiple drafts or
There
kind
were
of
just multiple, yeah, there were people who came in and out, but
Mhm.
this was like early on. It was just me figuring this out. And then yeah, then you have to go do your contract. And I was such a green writer. They were like, "Great," and then I left and I was like, "Okay, what does great mean?" Like literally, that's how I'm like, does great mean what? And then my agent was like, "We're going to get into the deal." And I'm like, "What does that mean?" And I think the deal took like a month. And I thought like, well, I guess it's not happening. Like
Yeah.
literally, I was so
Yeah.
dumb. I'd be like holding my breath, like, is there going to be a deal? Am I going to have some money? Am I, and now you're just like, yes, like it's fine, but I just didn't know any of that. And now they do even more with like round tables and stuff like that, where it was less of that and more just like, okay, we're switching you off. We're going to bring in Burst Steers for a bit. Oh, we're switching up. We're going to bring in Audrey Wells. We're going to, you're doing that. But then they'd bring someone in and then they'd bring you back. And it was sort of, at the time, it was like, I don't know, I sort of miss it in a weird way. But at the same time, it had its pitfalls because the script could really come back and be like, what just happened? You know what I mean? You'd be like, oh my God, what happened?
Yeah.
And now there's this tendency where they'll keep you on longer, but at the same time, then they'll bring on a director and just let them have a draft. And sometimes with a script, I always fight it because I'm like, let me do one pass with the director. Because it's sort of like you've built this beautiful, crazy spaceship, right? And like, where all the stuff is. And someone else is just going to come on. And more often than not, I mean, believe me, I took a lot of writers like, oh, that director fucked up my script royally because they just don't know where all the buttons and levers are. Do you know what I mean? So it becomes... you have to fight for that. You have to really advocate for yourself. And you're not fighting. It's not like, I always say this, like, I serve the story. So you become territorial and protective of the story. It's not about me. It's not like, oh, it's mine and I'm so good and blah, blah. It's more like, listen, I've spent a lot of time with this crazy story and I know what it likes and what it doesn't like. And I've tried, and I can take you down all the pathways I went to that didn't work. You know what I mean? And I think like I've just been advocating for that a lot. And a lot of studio executives I talk to will often say to me like, oh, you were kind of right on that. I'm like, yeah, I know I was right. I was like, don't just listen to me. I'm right. So I think there's a little bit more now of like, no, that director, you're going to have to work with the writer for a draft, because directors who don't write that much, it's just not the same as a writer who writes all the time, So I think, I don't know, I just advocate for things like that. That's really important to stick up for yourself like that, but not under the guise of like, oh my God, you're throwing me under the bus. Because like you'll feel that way. You'll be like, I got all the touchdowns and now you're replacing me in the fourth quarter, and like, oh my God, so mad, like literally temper tantrums, but keep those at home. Like you can just totally have a temper tantrum and eat 10 pints of ice cream and feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah, it's your
But
baby.
then you have
It
to
makes
go
sense.
back. Yeah, it's your baby. But then you have to go back and say, listen, I think it would be a really good idea if I even just sit with the director for 2 weeks, things like that. And then you have to convince the director, because sometimes directors think they're really all that, But ask any director about writing and they all go, oh, that's hard. And you're like, yeah, which is, it is. It's torturous. It's like getting punched in the face every day. And you don't even get to hang out with actors and there's no craft service. So yeah, it's really hard, you know?
Lonesome for sure.
It's so funny. Like sometimes when there's like a Writers Guild event and all the writers are at the tables, and invariably there's like one woman at every table with all the men, right? Because there aren't that many of us. But then when everyone starts talking and it is just the shit talking, so funny. I said to this one writer the other day, any execs that you like lately? And he's like, I fucking hate them all. And I was like, that's negative. Let's try to be a little more positive. Like, I don't think execs know how much writers don't like them. I mean, I like my execs. I always try to make it work. But like, also the other thing with execs and notes and things like that, if it's helpful at all, is like, if you're working with an executive, look at what their last thing was. Okay? Like maybe their last movie was bananas. Maybe they were working with some director who like, I don't know. Like you got to find out what their neuroses is. Like it's your job as the writer to do that. We call it Hannibal lecturing. Like you got to like go profile your execs, right? So that when they hand you a note, more likely than not, if you're doing your job, obviously if you've written like a tank, like sure. But like if you're really being diligent and true to what you pitched and you're delivering it, and you get a weird note, you got to find out what their last project was. Where's the crazy coming from? And then you have to massage the crazy. And you have to be like, oh, they're really actually just worried because the last actor they worked with refused to get out of the trailer because he didn't like, I don't know, the word just. I had that one time.
Yeah.
Don't use the word just. I'm like a verse. Like when you say, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I had to take out every just. He was like, that's not manly. That's not decisive. And I'm like, all right. God. But it's true because as a woman, we're always backing off what we're saying. I just want to say that I just. Exactly. So there was an aversion to that. And then I think I went overboard on something else later. And they're like, how come this person never says the word just? I was like, traumatized. So you just have to understand that everyone is afraid. Everyone doesn't know what's going to work because there's no way to know what's going to work. And so you have to be like the captain of this like shambolic ship. And it's always springing leaks and you're plugging everything up. But it's important to understand like what everyone's fear is. Like before on my like crazy 5-year path to selling a script, I worked I produced some off-Broadway theater with a bunch of actors and writers who all like, a lot of us went on to do really well. But we did these one-act plays in Tribeca and it was so fun. It was like, oh my God. One of the writers is Regina Corrado and she did a play and she went on to do Deadwood and all sorts of stuff. And when we bump into each other at the supermarket, we always talk about how we had so much fun doing that because it was like flying by the seat of our pants. But for me, the lesson there was all I cared about was filling seats. I did not give a shit about the play. I didn't care because I was the one producing this and we had to fill up 120 seats every night or we were going to be broke. And that's all I cared about. And it was such a good lesson later because like, listen, that's what the studio cares about. Like they're spending $20 million and all they care about is how is it going to be seen? And you as a writer, like it used to be, this happened early on with me. They'd be like, well, what's the marketing look like? And I'd be like, oh, don't you have a division for that? Like, why is that my job? Yeah. But like, they need to know that so you have to be thinking about all that stuff. How are they going to sell it? How are they going to get eyeballs? Especially in like the whole Netflix 4 quadrants and the, attention economy and all that stuff. Although what I will say to all of that is that like the play's the thing. If it's good, people will watch. And that boils down to really good characters and interesting stories. It's not a program of like, oh, in 12 minutes, they have to have sex. And in 24 minutes, something has to blow up. That is just bullshit. And audiences don't stand for it. Because good stuff is always good stuff. There's never been a time where something good happened and people are like, oh, I don't really care for it because, it didn't hit 4 quadrants or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like it's just really important to remember that, because there's a big pull against that. There's a huge pull of like, oh, the algorithm, and how are we gonna, but you literally have to not care.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be like, I can't, you know, you can massage it, oh sure, yeah, you know, like, but you have to understand who's your audience and how do you sell it. But you can't necessarily write something for everyone. You'll fail because you're trying to write you. You know, like that's the whole point. Like you're the artist.
Yeah.
You know, so even if it's an assignment, they're hiring you to write that assignment because of you. Mm-hmm. They're not hiring it because you know how to type on a keyboard. Do you know what I mean? And there's a difference there. So you have to bring you to it. Mm-hmm. On top of all that other stuff. But in a weird way, if you're true to yourself, then that's, you know, it works.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now preparing for rapid fire questions.
What is your favorite rom-com and why?
My favorite rom-com is Annie Hall, because it is messy and human and flawed, and that to me is the gold standard. Because it feels like it's a genre that's acknowledging real life.
Love that. What is your favorite rom-com trope to write?
I would say that overall I'm allergic to the word trope, which is like my bag. But what I love to write is banter between flawed people who are trying really hard not to admit how much they care. That is what I
like
love.
That.
That's really good.
Yeah. I like the specific.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite rom-com outfit?
Okay, this is really weird, and it's not something I could ever wear because it's very aspirational, but I love Audrey Hepburn's train platform elegance in Love in the Afternoon. Mm-hmm. When she's running after, it's the greatest outfit. I say to my friends, could I wear that? No! I'm just like, but it's the best. It's such a great outfit.
Do you have a favorite rom-com line or moment?
I would say that even though it's a little bit hybrid, You Had Me at Hello is probably the greatest. Mm-hmm. It's the greatest line. Like, how do you ever top that? It's so simple and so perfect. And it was so funny. And Tom Cruise, the look on his face, because that's an example of a test, right? Like he's trying to convince her, I'm here and I love you. And she just goes, You had me at hello. And it stops him in his tracks. And he's like, and that's the most perfect scene. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's a good one.
Have you seen any rom-coms lately that you would recommend?
Oh, rom-coms lately.
Yeah.
Rom-coms lately. Well, actually, I just saw Is This Thing On last night, which I really loved, even though it's like more like middle-aged love. It's Bradley Cooper's new movie.
Oh.
And it's with Laura Dern and Will Arnett, and it's really sweet. But it's not like super young people being in love. Although these days there's not a lot of super young people being in love. I was watching something recently, and they're like, I want to have a family. And I'm like, but you're like 46. I was just like, what is happening? But I just think like everything's so expensive. That's like a really weird random thing that's like kind of ruining the romantic comedy groove.
Yeah.
But I will say there's a really old romantic comedy. It's total 80s cheese. And it's called Touch and Go. And it's Michael Keaton plays this really selfish hockey player who falls in love with his housekeeper. And there's like an apartment upgrade. And it is sublime.
Okay, I'll look it up.
It's really stupid.
Apartment upgrade.
And also the Coca-Cola Kid. I would recommend the Coca-Cola Kid. That's a great movie.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I've never heard of that either on the list.
Yeah, I like these recommendations. Okay, if money didn't matter at all, what is a rom-com that you'd want to make?
Okay, this is sort of weird, but this is what I would do. I would reboot Smokey and the Bandit as a hybrid rom-com action movie. And I would have Kate Hudson play the truck driver. And I would have Matthew McConaughey play Bandit. And instead of smuggling beer, they would be oil riggers stealing oil. and they would just have banter and they'd blow shit up and it would be so fun. That's what
Oh
I
my
would do.
gosh.
I love that. That is not what I expected you to say,
Yeah.
but I'm into it.
That's what I would do. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, cool. So to wrap up, yeah, can you just talk? I know you've been working on a novel. Like, what have you been? What's on the horizon?
Well, on the horizon is something called Immortal, which is going to be a TV show that I'm doing with Our Films and Media One, which is sort of like a European studio. It's like the Warner Brothers of Europe, I guess. And it's kind of like Orange is the New Black in an Italian convent in 1858. And it's this like banana psychological thriller, but it's really funny. It's like Mean Girls in a convent.
Ooh.
And it's based on a true
That's
story, and
amazing.
it's really, really fun. It's going to be really fun. So I'm excited about that. And I have a new novel that I'm going out with that's going to be part of a 3-book series. That's like, it's a caper, but it's also about reinvention. So more soon. And then I'm just working on that spec rom-com, the Alice Evans one. And I've written a novel a while ago called The Parker Gray Show. And I have a memoir called Tramps Like Us. And they're, available at booksellers near you.
Yeah, we'll put it all in the show notes. Are there any other places that you want to shout out for social media or ways to follow your career?
I'm very bad. I have like KristenBuckley.com, and sometimes I post on there. So if anything happens, I will post stuff on there. But I keep a very low social.
Yeah.
Profile.
Okay. Awesome.
My social media is sad, but I just can't keep up with it. I find it exhausting.
No, I get it.
And then you can't see anything anyone does because like the algorithm feeds it all out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
we're
so
over
true.
So
it too.
I'm just like, right? Aren't we all over it? I think we should all be over it.
Let's go back
I
to
think
the
we should
early
go
2000s of your film.
Yeah.
Go to a
Yeah,
bar
for
with no
sure.
tech.
What are those? I know, that's so fun. What zines? That's what they should bring back. Like you'd go to Tower Records and there'd be zines. Like, what's a zine? Like, how fun is that? Yeah, why not? I think everything that is old is new and new is old, and
It's so true. Yeah.
But this was really fun, you guys. Thanks for
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
chatting
This
with
was
us.
so
It was
much
an
fun.
I hope I
honor.
made
And
sense. I don't even know.
did.
I think you gave a lot of really good advice. I think
You
our
really
audience
did.
will.
This has been an episode of When Isabel Met Aviva.
If you want to stay up to date with our episodes, please subscribe. Bonus points if you leave us a positive review.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Threads at When Isabel Met Aviva. See you next time.